Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you all how to texture the character. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this. Um, to save time I'm going to kind of jump from spot to spot, but you'll see what I mean here momentarily. Um, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to select our character, and I have the eyes, by the way, already combined to the actual mesh. Later on, after we're done texturing, we're going to separate the eyes from the mesh. It's going to and they're going to sort of animate on their own. Excuse me. But for now, we're going to leave them combined. So I've got the eyes, and to do that, I've already showed you, but I have this. You shift select each eye, shift select the main mesh, and then just do the combine. Now from here, what we're going to do is in our UV shell here in our UV editor, I'm going to go to Tools and move UV Shell Tool. And I've already got this all laid out and placed nice and neat. And I'm going to just run a click and drag over everything. And then I'm going to go to Image and UV Snapshot. That's Image and UV Snapshot. Then from here, I'm going to browse where I want to put the folder, or the file, excuse me. And I'm going to call this uvmap.tga. And yes, I'm going to replace it. And then make sure under image format you scroll all the way down and get to Targa. Image format Targa. So I always add the extension in here, so like uvmap.tga. And the reason I do that is just because of previous versions, it wouldn't save unless you added the extension manually. Now I believe it will, but just out of habit I do it anyway. So just an FYI, so I just save it uv_map.tga. Okay. Then from there, make sure you have it under Targa, and then for here, I have my size at 2048 by 2048. You can change this to be a little bit less. 1024 by 1024 is perfectly satisfactory. If you have like a slower computer or something, or whatever, 1024 might be a better idea to run with. For me, I'm going to go 2048. I know my computer is capable of handling it. Plus, I'd like you to be able to see some of the higher resolution details as I'm working on it. But 1024 really should be totally fine. So, other than that, I have all this extra stuff. This is all done by default. The rest of it, I don't have to change any of it. So if yours doesn't look like this, just make sure it does match up. And then you can just go ahead and click Apply and Close. And I'm going to click Overwrite. And from here, in Photoshop, I'm going to go to File, Open, and UVMap. Oh, that's normal map. UVMap.tga. I'm going to click Open. And you're going to see here I have my UVs now. They're just in black and white. So what I like to do first is I'm just going to go ahead and start to basically color this in. Just think of it as sort of like a coloring book, if you will. So I'm going to click New Layer, and the New Layer button right here. In this case, it's a little plus sign. Yours might be like a square with a little corner triangle on the bottom left-hand corner, but it's regardless, it's in the same location, and if you hover over it, it will say Create New Layer. So I've got my new layer made, and I want to switch to my brush tool. So keyboard shortcut B or brush tool. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select sort of a skin tone. I'll go something like that for my character. Oh, I wanted to keep that open. For my character, let's click Open. And I could also just automatically hold Alt and just select the color with my brush tool activated and select the color off of this character. Now from here, I guess I'll start with just the face. And what I'm going to do, I have my brush size at 20, the hardness at 100%, and I'm simply going to hold Shift as I do this, and I'm just drawing and coloring in with the mouse. And I'm going to go around the outline first. It's just a habit of mine. and I find this to be a little bit easier and faster. And then I have that done. I'm going to switch to my paint bucket tool. I'm going to press it once. You'll notice I have this small little line, but if I click it one more time, it disappears. Alright. So now I've colored in the face of my character. And let's just do one more part. I'm going to go to a gray. And I'm going to color in this section. And I'm going to create another new layer. And I can call this like face or skin, whatever. This one will be, shorts, whatever. And I'm going to start to do the same exact thing as I just did with the previous part. And then grab my paint bucket tool and then click on it once, click on it again, and the entire thing is filled in. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to save this out holding Control Shift and S, or File and Save As. From here on out I'll be doing Control Shift S though. And I'm going to save this as a TGA. And we're going to call this Texture Example 001. That's fine. Click OK and yes and OK. And I have this set to 32 bits a pixel. And one last thing actually, when I do this save as a TGA, make sure you click this alpha channels off. Click the alpha channels off. Right? Click the alpha channels off. And then save it again if you have to. Click yes and OK. So now in Maya, I'm going to assign a new material, holding right click on the object with the object selected, and I'm going to do assign new material, holding right click. Then from here I'm just going to do a blend. It's the very first one. And then here, texture example 001 material. And under color, I'm going to click the little checkerboard, and then this opens up, this little pop-up, and then I'm going to click on File. And then on Image Name, on the folder, I'm going to click the little folder, and Texture Example 001, click Open. And by default it might look like this. Tap 6 on your keyboard, and then you'll be able to see the texture applied directly to your character. So I've only done the front and the head of this character. Alright. So now that I've done all of that, I showed you how to kind of paint over everything. I'm going to just sort of jump ahead and try this one. Okay. And then I've got this all sort of colored in already, right? So one of the other things I have here is I have my UVs, and I can turn this on or off to display my UVs directly over the texture map, which can be extremely helpful at times. So I'm going to show you how to do that. On here, in order to, let's just say, this is all I've got so far, right? I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm just going to click and drag and hold and hover over the new layer button and release. And then I'm going to drag this to the top, and it's going to cover everything. However, where it says normal here, I click on that, and I'm going to go to screen. I'm going to go to screen, and this is called your blend mode. And now by clicking on screen, it allows the sort of black color to disappear and the white color to sort of bleed through, if you will. And now I've got my UV overlay, right? I'm just named it UV overlay, and now I can sort of toggle it on and off and see sort of how my UVs lay over the actual texture map, which can be extremely helpful. So there's that. Now, once you get all of that done, I'll show you one other thing with this eye here. I'm going to go to File, Open, and we'll go Eye Color. And I've got this eye color here, and basically I found a texture of the this eye, and all I did was I used the elliptical tool here, click drag, and then what I did was I just ran a circle over it. You can hold shift to keep it perfectly circle, and then I just copied it, control C, and then I can go over here and do control V, and you'll see that it'll paste directly into your file. So in this case I just used the elliptical tool. It's the same thing except based off selection. Control A is select all, and then this elliptical tool, you can just sort of select what you need. So that's basically how I did that. Pasted it in, and then I basically turned down the opacity, turned on my UVs, and then Control T or Edit Free Transform, and just shift it into place and scale smaller until it fits, and then press enter when you're done. And that's how you kind of get that eye look. So that's how I did the eye. Alright, so I've got my texture here basically all said and done. I just colored in all of the parts of the character, and I'm going to go back into Maya, and I'm going to assign this material. And I think I already have it on here. Okay. And then there's my material on the character, and basically once I was all said and done, just over here, and you can go ahead and do reload or whatever, or just locate the file. So assign new material. Once you have that material, under the color, hit the checkerboard, locate the file you want, and then make sure you press 6 in your keyboard, because by default it's going to be on 5. When you tap 6, it's shaded display with texture maps on, and this is sort of the character that I've got up to this point. Alright, so nothing super fancy. Now one other thing, I'm already logged in. Now let's just say let's run a search for cloth, and this is just textures.com, and I'll just click this one. This one's totally fine, not really too concerned about it, and I'll hit download. And cut. And I'm going to show you here in just a second. Alright, so I just downloaded this off of textures.com. As you know from the previous semester, this is a website that we had used. And now what I'm going to do is, back in Photoshop, I'll just go on the gray material. I'm going to open that material. I've shown you guys pretty much these same tricks when we were creating the concept art. I'm just going to open up that fabric material. I'm going to press Control A, Control C. I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to do Control V. And on this, now it's created its own new layer, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to do Create Clipping Mask. Now I can't see it, and it's clipping on the gray because I want that to be cloth. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag this over here, and I could even resize it as needed. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just wanted to show you. And then what I'll also do is I'll run like a soft light over it, so it's still got the same color basically. And I could try overlay also, It all depends on what you're going for, hard, light, whatever. And then I'll do this one more time. I'm going to just duplicate that same one, and I'm just going to drag that one over to this side. And it looks like I gotta just make it a little bit bigger. And I'm not worried about the proportions matching up or anything like that. I just want to show you this. So I just created a clipping mask on these over the gray, so it'll only affect that gray area. And again, if I go ahead and save this out under TGA and diffuse UV test.tga, save. Okay. Oh, and make sure you turn off this alpha channels button. Turn off the alpha channels button. And I'm going to go back over here. And I'm just going to show you really quickly. Click open. And now you'll see I actually have that sort of texture laid directly on this character's only this section of the UV shells. Alright, so that's a way you can do cloth directly on top of your character model already. So that's just one way to do that. Can be extremely useful. Now I have videos below that does this pretty much from scratch using photo references all the way through. Especially if you did this model using your own photo reference, definitely worth a look. I've got like 5 or 6 videos down there that all have excellent material on how to do this step by step. Just in case you do want to take a look at them. Now, the next thing I want to show you is, now that I've got this character here fully textured, you know, depending on the character look and design and all that kind of stuff that you're going for, just so you know, this is something that is like perfectly okay to submit just like this. Just make sure that your UVs are all painted in properly. Okay? Okay. So, now with that being said, I want to show you a different way to do this. So, I'm going to assign a Lambert material just to start. And another way to go into texturing is to actually start to project textures directly onto the mesh. So if I go to File, and before I even start doing this process, if I go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and Plugin Manager, that's Windows, Settings, Preferences, and Plugin Manager, make sure that you probably already have this on, especially if you took my 3D Modeling 1 course, 3D Modeling and Animation 1. Under obj export.mll in the plugin manager, just make sure it's on loaded and auto load. You can click refresh and then close. And all that does is it allows you to, and then before I even go to the next step, select the arrow tool, go to object mode, select your object, and then go File, Export Selection, and then, hold on, obj, and then just go ahead and we'll call this test 001, and then just make sure you at the bottom here under obj export, make sure it says obj export, not MA or .mb or anything like that. Make sure it says obj export, and then go ahead and then just click on export selection. And just so you know, all of these settings are this is how I have them set up. And then export selection. Now back in Photoshop, I'm going to close out of this eye. I'll keep that open for now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Open, and now I can go to open my character, what did I call it? Test001.obj, and click Open. By default, this should pick up automatically all the settings that you need for the 3D model that you're going to be opening here shortly. But just in case it's not, here are the settings that I have it set up for, and just an FYI. And then just go ahead and name it whatever you'd like, and then press OK. And then this scene has materials that are not used by any of the objects. Do you want to remove them? Sure. Why not? You are about to create a 3D layer. Would you like to switch to the 3D workspace? Definitely yes. Click OK. Now I've got my character here, and I can see directly on him. I can go ahead and double click over here on this initial shading texture, and you'll see that I've got the texture here for this character. Alright. Now, one of the things that might happen, and I know I explained this in 3D Modeling 1 because we did cover projection texturing in 3D Modeling 1. As a reminder, in case for whatever reason you downloaded a new update and Photoshop reverted back to default settings, the way you can, if it comes up saying like you need to change settings or something like that, it won't open, cannot open file, something like that, go to Edit, Preferences. It's at the bottom. Let me get out of the way. Edit, Preferences, right? And then you can go to General. And in here, before you even open up that file, under Performance, it'll say something over here. Just click on this Use Graphics Processor, and then under 3D, all this stuff should appear again. So under Performance, and you can adjust this if you need to like whatever your computer is capable of handling. And then just make sure it says, you click the little Use Graphics Processor. Mine's already checked on, and more than likely it's not allowing me to click it on or off because I already have a 3D object open. So I'm going to click OK. That's fine. And now back over here, if I wanted to, I could also begin to color directly on this. However, I don't know for sure if there's a way. I believe there is. I just don't know how to do it off the top of my head. To hide and show the UVs here. But just to show you really quickly, it's going to take a smidget longer because what it's doing is it's refreshing the live current model. And I'm just going to wrap around this entire UV shell here just to show you can do this basically 100% in Photoshop without having to jump back and forth between files. And you'll actually notice that Photoshop triangulates it for you automatically, which is pretty cool. And then in order to fill this section in, you could paint the whole thing in, but I'm just going to quickly switch to my essentials because the paint bucket tool does not work in 3D, the 3D user interface. So I'm going to switch to my paint bucket tool and just click on that twice, and then I'll switch back to my 3D layer and come back over here and just show you now that I've got that painted. You'll see that the face is painted, but it doesn't display those UVs overlaying on it, even though they do appear to overlay here. Now, using the arrow tool, this is stuff that you probably already learned in 3D1, but make sure the arrow tool is selected, and this is how you can move around your model. You can use this is the pan tool. This one I don't like to use because it skews my camera, and it's hard to get it just right. So I don't like to use the roll. It's called roll the 3D camera. Slide the 3D camera is okay, but the main ones I use is rotate, and it's different because you're probably going to be trying to press Alt while you're doing this. You don't need to click on Alt. You just need to make sure you have the move tool selected, and then these are the 3D modes that you can obviously work around. Now, if you want to change the lighting, click on this little infinite light 1 at the top, and then you'll get this like little semi-sphere, and you can rotate around. You'll even notice that the shadow changes location also. And then just to get out of it, just click off of that light, and then here's your pan and your zoom, and these are basically the 3 common ways that we maneuver around Autodesk Maya. Just a little bit different. So anyway, now that I've got that done, and I've already like sort of created my entire texture per se, right? once I would be done with this, I would just save this out as a Photoshop file, and then also save it out as a TGA file, and make sure you click the alpha channels off. Now I want to show you another thing. This is something that I do cover in 3D Modeling 1. I'll go ahead and click on, I just want to take a quick look and see. I'm going to open up this image here, because if I were doing this as a photo reel, I would do select all and then copy. This was going to be photo reel. I'm now going to paste that in and then edit transform, or Control T, edit transform. And then I'm going to just scale this down, and I'm going to turn my opacity down to like 43%, and then I'm going to zoom back in. And I'm going to just try to cover this character as best as I can to get him to fit right. And something like that will work fine. And now that I have that done, I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to come back over here and make sure, but I don't think it updated, so I'm going to close out of this. And if it ever does that, just go ahead and close out whatever you're working on immediately as far as the UV shells go, and then just double click on it again and make sure that it's going to update in real live time. So if you start making changes to one and the updates don't happen in real time, it's because they're no longer linked, just so you know. So now with my layer 2, here it's this character completely laid over the original, and now I'm going to go back to my layer 2, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to do merge down. And now I don't know why when I drop that color on does it become totally dark, but now I'll show you what I'm going to do. Is I'm just going to save this file out, Control Shift S. I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file first. And then I'm going to save this out also as a TGA file, and I'm going to hit save and click OK. And now when I go back into Maya, on this particular character, I'll show you the projection texture I just did, because it's not showing up as much as I would like to on yours. Click open. And now you'll see the actual drawing, at least only from the front view, directly located onto my model, and then I would have to go in and change all of that extra stuff on the sides and the back as needed. But he looks pretty creepy like this, actually, pretty zombie-like or something like that. But anyway, that's my projection texture. So the one I went with is sign existing character material 1, and here is the character material that I did. So this is a perfectly fine example to go with. Now once you have all of your colors on there, so on and so forth, your eye texture, the entire texture, something like this is totally fine. I would like you in areas that you have cloth or some type of skin, just add some type of material over it, as I did with the clipping mask. If it is skin, but however, at a bare minimum, I want you to at least color these in using the brush tool, because this is the sort of the me open up. This is the way that that UV shells will look that are completed by professionals. Basically, they'll have it basically outlined for each section, and then the background will be black for the diffuse. Now, so you only need to have a diffuse texture done. However, if you do want to go above and beyond, I'm not giving extra credit for it or anything like that, but you can create a normal map file as well as a specular file like we did all throughout 3D Modeling 1 for the midterm, for the final, and then throughout various different labs during the semester. So now that I've got that done, I've showed you the projection texturing, I've showed you to paint, I showed you how to create a clipping mask and change the blend mode and add an overlay on top of the UV overlay on top of the entire material. I want to show you one more thing because it is sort of becoming like a standard to have in it doesn't matter if it's video games, CGI film, animated film, whatever you want to call it. Normal maps and specular maps and all that kind of stuff are pretty much standard now to include on your model. Anyway, so I wanted to show you the same model, and I did a higher res version of this character. At the moment, I'll explain it to you in a second. So let me turn this one off and turn this one on. And I did a character here where I actually included a normal map. I did this pretty quickly, but I just wanted to show you. And it is the same exact topology. It's just a little bit more sculpted on. And just with the normal map on, the normal map does add a lot of stuff to it. However, I did do this in a sculpting software. Autodesk has one for free with an educational license called Autodesk Mudbox. Mudbox is super awesome. I did mine using ZBrush, and basically, both the softwares do the same. They're like 3ds Max, Autodesk Maya. There's tons of softwares out there that kind of do the same thing and compete against one another. So anyway, that being said, ZBrush or Mudbox, and Mudbox you can get a free version of. However, I don't teach those courses here, but it is sort of a standard, especially for like video game and filming in general. And this is what it looks like with my normal map on. So I have 3 maps like we did before in our 3D1 class. Diffuse texture, normal map, and specular. So those are like the 3 bare minimum. And then the other thing is I'd like to show you without the normal map on. It literally just looks just like this. Or even there is no extra defined sort of thing to him. I just did a little additional sculpting on him, but however, just to show you how much detail can really bleed through using normal maps, because it is a typically a pretty standard question that I do get from students, and this is sort of the outcome that I got applying a normal map to it, just so you know. So we do cover 3 normal maps and all that, and specular maps in 3D1, so you should know how to at least convert your Photoshop file if you wanted to go that route under Filter, 3D, Generate Normal Map, and then in a second. And I don't really have a whole lot on here, and it doesn't doesn't look like it's reading it properly. So, in which case, let me to essentials. There we go. In which case, that was really weird. You might want to just sort of grab all the layers, duplicate them, and then Control E to merge them, and then do a filter 3D generate normal map. And then that seemed to work just fine. And then you can, whatever additional information, so let's just say you add like a skin sort of thing, overlay on the skin parts, that, stuff like that. It'll probably bleed through much, much more cleaner. However, I don't have a whole lot of detail on here. And you can always also do invert height, just as an FYI. And you'll see it sort of pops out or sinks in. And that's how you can go ahead and generate a normal map using Photoshop. But other than that, I showed you how to bake down the projection. I showed you how to paint over. I don't think I've left anything out. If you do have any questions, be sure to ask me. One of the things I'm unable to figure out right now is why this keeps going dark. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the lighting. It does have something to do with the texture, though, by the way. If I turn off the default lighting, it looks like it does retain some of it, but image-based light. I'm not exactly sure why it's doing that, because it never has done it to me in the past. So it could be some kind of new update where I just have to kind of fiddle around with the settings and see why it's doing that. Other than that, projection texturing, I cover it in much more detail in the videos below also. I wouldn't even say more detail, I just do it more repetitively, so I cover it the same exact thing numerous times. But other than that, I don't think I've left anything out. So in Maya, just go ahead and submit a file. Something like this is perfectly fine with the skin. If he has a shirt on, however you want to texture it, just make sure that at least you have the base colors painted in. So that's the bare minimum. And then you can always add extra details in, such as cloth, such as I have here, so on and so forth. So and I'll show you really quickly before I close this video a couple of maps that are really common in 3D modeling. Let's see. AO, diffuse, normal map, and then I think that should do it. So in this particular example, not this one. Normal map, this one. Okay, so in this particular example, here's my normal map that you saw displayed over that particular character. So I just have some of the details basically just sculpted right in. Here's part of the ear, the chest, the underwear, the hands, stuff like that. Diffuse texture, what I'd done, first here's my my specular map. So it's just, I basically just took my diffuse, switched it to black and white, and then adjusted the brightness and contrast on it. Now, that's just a fast, easy way I kind of show you how to do it, but it is very efficient. And as you remember, probably through that same discussion on that particular week, where I had shown you a video on metals and how you can sort of really distinguish extra things, so you can always paint in extra things on your specular map to get that type of look that you're going for. So you can get really cool results out of that, which we did cover already. Now we've got the here's what is called an ambient occlusion map. I just want to show you what it looks like normal. So this is what is called an ambient occlusion, or also known as an AO map. And what it does is it basically creates shadowing on your character that typically a lot of times is just overlaid to create that sense of right over your texture map. And this is getting a little bit more complicated, but I have had questions about it in the past, so I figured I'd cover it right now. On this one, I have it on to soft light on blend mode, and then I just brought down the opacity to, sort of a happy medium. But it kind of sort of builds in some of that shading on the face and on the body. And if I had a little bit more definition in this character, you'd really be able to see a lot more information. But you can tell where that information is coming from, so it gives it that little bit of extra, especially in the face. You could see it, right? You can really tell and make out where the face is and kind of what's happening in there. And that's just a really common practice where artists will take that ambient occlusion. Depending on the render engine, some of them you will just put the flat material on the diffuse, the flat color one. And then like Sketchfab, you can add the ambient occlusion map directly to an ambient occlusion setting, basically. But here, this is sort of more or less an older style where they just overlay it on, and it kind of creates a default shadowing right off the bat. Then we have the specular, and then obviously we have just the diffuse texture here, and that's what my diffuse texture looks like. And I think that covers it all for now. Other maps that are commonly used today, I'm sure you may have heard of, like PBR. I think it's like photo based. What does it stand for again? I can't remember off the top of my head. But it is basically an extremely high quality physically based rendering. Excuse me, physically based rendering. I had to look it up real quick. So it really PBR maps. They'll include things like height maps and roughness maps and metalness maps and all these different kinds of maps that we include now. But for just sort of bare bones, what you need today in today's standard industry, diffuse, specular, normal are the bare bones minimum 3. All right. The other ones kind of come later in time, and as you kind of grow with the software and learn more about 3D modeling. Anyway, that's really all I got here. I just wanted to kind of cover that really quickly because I have had questions about it in the past. Other than that, so here's what my character eventually turned out to be. I don't expect yours to look like this. Just do the best you can. And like I said, having something just like this is totally fine and totally acceptable. Be sure to look at the videos that I have. I have it listed like under old videos or something. Take a look at those. There's like 5 or 6 of them. Even if you just scrub through them, there could be more information that'll be really, really helpful for you. So don't just limit yourself to this one unless you totally understand exactly what you're doing. So anyway, bare bones, just make sure you color it in, right? And try in certain areas to add, like if you have cloth, try to add a cloth texture and things like that. All right. Other than that, it's really all I got for you in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, shoot me a message. And thanks for watching.